Hello everyone, my name is REDRUP and you're listening to the It's Not a Phase podcast. In this episode I'm joined by James Kennedy, aka Jibs of Ocean's 8 Alaska, and we talk all about their new album Disparity. Along with that we discuss the 5-year-long wait between records, introducing some lo-fi influences and sounds into the mix, and loads more. Before we get started, let's cover off the boring stuff. If you enjoy this episode and would like to support the podcast, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review wherever you're listening to this. We also have a Patreon, where everyone gets access to each episode a week earlier than everyone else, and a merch store too. You can also follow and reach out to me on social media. All of the links can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. And with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into this week's episode of It's Not a Phase. What's up everybody? Thanks for joining me on this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by James Kennedy of Ocean's 8 Alaska. How are you doing, man?
Hey mate, yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm kind of glad the heat wave's over. I can't stand that.
Oh my god, doing music work in my flat, in my apartment was impossible during then. It's even too hot now with like all my gear on it, because it's just like a room, so it's kind of impossible to work in at the even when it's just kind of mild. So when it was that real heat wave, I was kind of like melting throughout the day, and then like I'd sometimes look at my cat and I'd just expect him. I'd expect to come out, turn around at one point and just see a roast chicken on the floor, not a cat anymore, just a roast chicken.
I mean, that's a logical outcome that you'd expect. In that heat. Yeah. So obviously the big news for you guys is the release of your new album, your third album, Disparity, which I know you know, the fans have been waiting a long time for, because it's been 5 years since the last record, I think.
Something crazy like that, dude.
I think it was 2017, wasn't it? Yeah. How's it feel on your side of things to be finally putting this album out there?
Oh, mate, it's quite a surreal feeling. There's so many things that, you know, put a halt onto the progress of this album getting finished. You know, with just the COVID pandemic just really threw things off quite a while. It was really unfortunate. So it's strange, kind of like, you know, coming out of that world anyway, just from a personal kind of living situation, to then actually like going into, we need to really kind of continue with getting this album finished and getting it out there. So to get to this point now where it's like, now it's actually coming out. Now, all those years just waiting to get things done, and now it's actually here, is very surreal. I can't really describe it. I'm kind of just taking it bit by bit, with enjoying listening to the final masters, which is really fun because, you know, we've been sitting on the instrumental for this for years and years and years. That was done so long. So to be able to hear everything finally done is cool, and then seeing music videos is really cool. It's just like, okay, now there's a visual aspect to this as well, and you could say the same about the artwork. So it's very surreal.
All systems go at the moment then.
All systems go, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so we kind of mentioned it before the interview started, but there's obviously quite a short time frame between you guys announcing that the album is a thing, it exists, it's coming out, to actually coming out and being able for anyone to hear. What kind of made you want to do such a quick turnaround? Because, you know, obviously the typical time frame is like 3 months, 4 months, maybe even longer sometimes.
Yeah, well, just to kind of relay off the previous question, it's been so long. You know, it's been a really long time for fans, you know, however long they've been with us, for them to wait even longer. You know, we didn't want to, once we got all the assets and everything in line and just looked at, you know, like I said, like the masters and the videos and everything, and just thought, let's just get going with this. Everybody's waited long enough. We have waited long enough as well. So, you know, why wait any longer? People are aware that there's something going on, especially with the release of New Dawn and just the other couple of things that we've put out on our socials as of recent. So everybody deserves it. We wish we could have put it out earlier, obviously, but, you know, we just want to get things going now. So, yeah.
So, I mean, the obvious elephant in the room is COVID, no doubt, slowed things down. But what kind of other things came into play that, like you say, slowed the process down and made it, you know, so long between the past, you know, this new record and the previous one? That's
a really good question. It's, you know, not to go too deep into the airing dirty laundry side of things, but obviously we got James back, and when that process started, it was and we released Metamorph. That was the only track that we actually had recorded with vocals, and then COVID hit bad, so that put a complete stop to everything at that point there. James's living situation meant that he couldn't really track stuff at himself at where he was, or even lay down demos at the particular time that it was. So it's that just really halted things, and what it does is that it kind of breaks a flow as well. So we get Metamorph done, and then it's just like, oh fuck, everything's just stopped now completely. When we're trying to get back into the swing of things, I mean, I'm sure you remember as well, it's like, oh, we had like a brief period where we did come out of lockdown. It's like, cool, let's get going again.
Yeah.
Then we went into another lockdown.
Yeah.
And we factor in things like other members, myself included, getting coronavirus. You have to isolate. That throws things off. Excuse me. And I don't know. I guess it's just a case of just getting back into the swing of like a real recording ethic, because then you got to factor in that we're adults now, and we have other things that we have to do. I got married this year, so that you have to carve out time for that. And
congrats, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so it was just a mixture of things, really, but just mainly the COVID pandemic. It really knocks. You could either thrive in that environment, or it can really screw up your system and your workflow, and it kind of did that for us more than anything. But everybody in their own way kind of went off and did different things. Like Chris used the opportunity to do his side project album Steezy, which I was working on with him a lot. So I don't know, everything happens for a reason in a way. I don't feel like the album coming out when it is coming out now, it feels wrong. It doesn't feel wrong, actually. It kind of feels like, okay, this is right now. This is working. So yeah. I don't know. I'm a bit of an optimist in that regard.
Well, you've got to be in a world like this when you've got COVID going on and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, if you got to, I don't know, you got to stay positive in some way, haven't you? Otherwise, all hope is lost.
Find the silver lining where you can. Yeah. You mentioned obviously Metamorph was kind of ready, and you put it out. Did that kind of come out and you were initially ready to carry on from that point, or did, like you say, COVID coming back delay it again? Like, was Metamorph, when it initially came out, the initial point where you were going to start promoting the album?
Well, there was still more work to do on it. That was the problem. It was like, okay, Metamorph is out. Let's finish off this.
Right. Okay.
The vocal tracking aspects of it, because like I said, like James is back. It wasn't even like, we had X amount of things done before Metamorph as well, because this was like when James came in, it was like, whoa, okay, we're straight into he's like, lay down this track straight away, let's just record it now. And then it was like so quick, and then just taken away from it. It kind of sucked, but so it was very, very disjointed.
So you mentioned obviously James coming back into the band, coming in after obviously Jake stepped away. How did that kind of James returning come to be? Was it that he came to you and he wanted to come back, or did Jake say he was leaving and he started searching for vocalists? And then, I don't know, did you reach out to James? Did other vocalists audition? What kind of happened there? Well,
we just thought of what is a logical step for the band, and it's tricky because you can do several things. Like, we could have looked for a new vocalist, but there was kind of like this intuitive idea of reconciliation between, the current members and our old vocalist. It just seemed like a nice thing to be able to just reach out, first and foremost, just as like hey, how's it going? How you been? What have you been up to? We didn't want to make it as cut and dry as, yo, James, our other guys gone, do you want to come back?
Yeah.
Because it's a brotherhood, isn't it? It's a friendship. You got to have a good chemistry amongst all members, and we just thought this might be a nice thing to happen first and foremost, and maybe we've all kind of like grown up, and there'll be a better mutual understanding between us all again. And it was really nice. It was really nice to reach out, and just that's the kind of approach that we had for it. The business kind of approach for us was not how we wanted to look at that. You know, we had this music and we wanted to do it justice. And like I said, there was just this intuitive idea of, you know, let's reach out to James, see how he's doing, see what he's up to. Maybe he's interested in doing this with us again. Maybe he just wants to be friends. That's totally fine. Let's just see what happens. But, you know, it turns out that he was really interested in the reconciliation, like I said. And then it just went from there, dude.
So it was kind of quite natural then, quite organic kind of return to the band.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was cool.
So when did the writing and recording for the album begin? I know you said before the kind of instrumentation you sat on for quite a while. And then obviously you put out Metamorph because that was the first one fully recorded. Was the whole instrumentation recorded then and it was just kind of putting the vocals down, or was there quite a lot of more bits to do?
Yeah, God, the instrumentation was done years ago. After Hikari, obviously we did a lot of touring, and just in between we just got this record done. We had all the sample banks from Clem. We had a bunch of ideas, and we just went with it. And guitars were just done really quick. You know, myself and Chris did that, and he smashed the engineering. Mike Adam as well, obviously. And Chris went to Detroit back with Nick Sampson to do the drums. Absolutely rinsed that. So it was really kind of over and done with quite quickly. So we were sitting on the instrumental for quite a while. It was just that interim between, you know, Jake stepping down and us figuring out what we're going to do until when we had James come back and start Metamorph. So It was definitely a gap. Right.
So technically, a big portion of Disparity is kind of existed pre-COVID then. It just was never finished.
Yeah, absolutely, which is kind of weird. It's interesting listening to it with that kind of frame of mind, knowing that nobody else is going to hear it like that. And my one worry was that it was going to kind of outlive itself. I don't know if that's the right way of describing it, but for you, it's kind of like a fresh listening experience, whereas for me, I know it very, very well.
Yeah.
And the worry was that I can't kind of perceive it from somebody else's perspective. So I don't know if other people are going to hear it and go, that's kind of sounding a little bit like not keeping with the times. But
yeah,
hopefully that doesn't come across.
Well, how do you feel when you listen to it now?
I guess actually there's some, you know, it's not completely true what I'm saying, because obviously now, like I said, I'm listening with obviously the vocals, and the full master has given the album another life. And to see some visuals with it as well is really, really interesting. So yeah, to be fair, thinking about it, it's definitely refreshed itself for me, which is really, really nice. To hear it in its kind of like final form is definitely a new experience.
Yeah. Well, seeing as you've been sitting on it for so long, I mean, I don't want to kind of jump the gun because, you know, the album's still like brand new and stuff, but has there been any other like stuff recorded that's not on there, like newer stuff, or, you know, has that kind of been discussed, like new stuff that you've been writing or recording or discussing or anything like that?
So when we write with Oceans, it's never just throw the ideas in and go. There's only a handful of tracks where that has really kind of been the case. Funny enough, Hancha was one of them. That was like an idea that Chris and Mike had, and I was like, we need to continue writing this. This is sick. And then Clem our producer got us the beat, and he just flew. So most other tracks, we really, really take a lot of time. That's not to say Hancha didn't have any love or care like other tracks, but it's more that we have so much attention to detail across all the composition that, you know, each track can take a month to write. So we don't tend to just throw something down and continue that process. And then I know a lot of bands can have this kind of process where they write like a bunch of tracks and then they choose the best, which is totally fine. That, you know, every band is different, you know, do what works for you, but that doesn't work for us. So we don't have excess tracks lying around. There are some ideas, like 2 or 3 ideas where we were just trying something and the song was just not working. So we cut loose from those, but you know, everything for Disparity is pretty much just what we had. In terms of like writing new stuff, it was kind of like, again, kind of going back to that, everything happens for a reason. It really did give that breathing room for Chris to do the Steezy project, you know, so that's finished now. So that's kind of only recently come out. So now we are having Disparity come out as well. It's like, oh my God, everything's kind of done now. So what do we do next? And that's currently where I'm at. I'm thinking, what do we do next?
Yeah. But it's kind of hard to plan all that because you've got to kind of see how this album lands, don't you? Because that could stop you from, if you're getting like tours left, right and centre and you're touring pretty much every other week for the next 2-3 years, then that's kind of fate's decided for you what's happening next.
Yeah, but we've done it before, so we'll make it.
Can you guys kind of like write on the road? Because I know some bands, you know, kind of struggle, don't they? They want to have like, they're either in touring mode or they're in writing and recording mode.
Yeah, interestingly, actually, well, we did that for Hikari as well, but for Disparity, the instrumental did start on the road. I think the track Plague Speech, the intro for that was wrote in New Jersey. It was wrote at this weird kind of like, I don't know if it was made for musicians, but it was this random building, just one floor building where this guy was there and they had like a fridge full of like drinks and a place where you could just like set up your laptop and do shit. And we were like, oh fuck, we've got to get right in this next album. So we just started an idea there. The intro for Plague Speech, I think that's what it was anyway, or something like that. But then I think a lot of the other tracks were kind of started on the road in Europe. I know more of Plague Speech was written at an Airbnb place in Austria. There was a lot of like tense moments there, so that's why that track is probably so angry. So yeah, we've definitely done it before, and you know, parts of Disparity are definitely made around the world, if you like.
Right. Were any parts written, like, I know obviously James came into the fold. Did you have any vocals recorded when Jake was in the band, and then obviously you kind of just got rid of them and James came in and did his bit?
Yeah, there was a couple of tracks where there was some parts, you know, laid down by Jake. But yeah, once that kind of folded and we knew that relationship was done there, that they were just, we moved away from those just because we wanted to keep those tracks. You know, there was definitely a collaborative process even with Jake there. So we didn't want it to be, you know, he's put that effort in to do something there and then we get rid of it and then we take the track as well. Like everyone's involved, so we wanted to keep those tracks. We put a lot of time into them, so they had James's parts over in the end.
So obviously your previous record Hikari was, you know, there was influences and even like weaved throughout it, you had, you know, Japanese instrumentation and music. What would you say has influenced and drove the direction of Disparity?
No, that's a good question. I have to dig at the memory banks here. Well, we definitely are not we don't try and do things from it's never forced, is what I'm trying to say. We're never like, if we're not feeling something, we're never just like, oh, fuck it, just get it done. It's never come from that. We have to kind of mess around with different ideas to see what is kind of sticking. And we knew we'd started something when we started working with Clem for, you know, tracks like Hansha, but we didn't necessarily want to keep doing the Japanese vibe, not because we didn't like it, it's just because that already had a life of its own. I don't think at that particular point we felt like we needed to expand upon that again. Well, if we did have ideas that were, you know, making us feel that way, then yeah, we probably would have. But at that point, we weren't there for it. What we did have was samples from Clem that we were listening to, and we were like, okay, we can definitely hear something coming from this. And we worked on tracks like Soul. That was a really, really early one that we worked on. That gave us kind of like a feel of this. And we were listening to a lot of lo-fi at the time as well, and it just kind of gave us this idea of, yeah, let's do something with this. Like we've heard, you know, not to bash down on other bands in the scene, but we've heard over the years some bands kind of like do that kind of thing, or even if incorporating electronic music with it. And we were just like, I don't feel like a lot of people are really doing it as thoroughly as they could be, and that's not the driving force for composing these tracks that way. But we were like, look, let's go really wild with this. Let's see if we can really intermingle these kind of conflicting genres. So yeah, we just carried on working with tracks like that with Soul. and then Metamorph. But one thing we don't like to do is make a complete concept album like that, because it can get a little punishing after a while. Like if every track was lo-fi beats, because I mean, certain genre mashups you can make that work for. It's not impossible to do that, but we felt that these are very, very conflicting, so you've got to tread lightly here. We didn't make every single track about that. Similarly, we wanted to just go with the flow with the writing process, and there was definitely these a lot of tension, a lot of anger that kind of bled itself into these more deathcore tracks like Dead Behind the Eyes and Plague Speech again. So yeah, we just kind of, like I said, we go with the flow. We're not really trying to tick boxes for other people as such, and just go with whatever sticks.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned the lo-fi thing, you've done it like pretty subtly. You're not like beating it to death, because obviously you can hear it in Metamorph with like the main like sample going around the back, Sol as well, and Paradigm. And like I think that's the right thing to do. You don't want to make it like your gimmick or your shtick, that you're just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Exactly. It's purely because of the love of the music and the love of the genre. I know myself and Chris, I mean, he's my favourite artist, this guy called Bonobo, who makes I wouldn't necessarily capture him as lo-fi, but he makes a lot of electronic beats, and we're obsessed with that dude. So there's a lot of inspiration, organic inspiration that comes from there. I really do mean that. I would listen to him more than most artists, even though I'm a metal guitarist.
Yeah.
So we like to have those things in there because that means something to us and it gets us excited. We're not trying to kind of like impress people for like as a flex. It's more just like, I actually really enjoyed listening to this. We try and, kind of like as I said before, I really try and take a step back and listen as a consumer and think, well, this was really cool. When me and Chris are composing, a lot of the times it is a case of we need this part to make us, want to stand up and go, what the fuck? That was sick.
That's the criteria for a good song, is it?
Yeah, stand up and say, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are heading out on tour in September for a few dates across the UK. How are you feeling about playing these new songs live for the first time?
That's a funny question. It's always a little bit scary, just because like you have to really get in a flow playing live. The more shows you play, the better you get. And there's definitely been a shortage of shows in general, as of recent. It's only really kind of this year where things have gone back to really kind of going back to normal. So we did some shows earlier in Europe this year in the UK, which were really cool. But it was kind of like, oh, fuck. I need to kind of like dust off the cobwebs here. I'm a bit older as well, so my body's... I'm definitely like more physically fit than I've ever been, but you're still kind of, as you get older, you're not as resilient, I guess.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like jumping around on stage, then afterwards being like, oh, God, that kind of hurt. But for this UK tour, it's these new tracks. There's definitely some parts where I'm like, shit, man, this is like the hardest stuff. Like we've wrote to play some really kind of like just actually physically demanding things to do, especially for Chris as well. So I'm excited for the crowd. For myself, once I get those first few shows in, or even just the first show, I know I'll feel a little bit more kind of relaxed, just so I kind of like see and get a feel for what everybody's enjoying more. And but I am looking forward to it. It should be really fun.
Are there any songs in particular that you want to, you look forward to playing the most?
Paradigm is going to be fun, just because even though the stab section in the middle, the stabs are quite quick, which again goes back to the kind of like physical workout aspects of it.
Yeah.
It's a relatively straightforward track to play, so I know I can have a bit of fun with that one whilst still, really having to like put the focus in to make sure I'm nailing the parts. With the Paradigm, I've got to be careful really, because I'm telling everyone what. I don't want to say all the tracks that.
Yeah, well, without like unveiling it, if you did play Dead Behind the Eyes, I think that would get a few mosh pits going.
Fuck! I wish we're not. Well, okay, so we're not doing that one on this tour, which isn't giving away too much there. But I wish well, I hope for us to be doing that one in the future, because that is probably one of, if not my favourite tracks on the album.
Yeah.
And yeah, you are right. That will definitely get people throwing each other around a little bit.
But some shapes.
Exactly. But that song is, again, for guitar, and I think for probably drums as well, it's really hard. So I'm just like, oh man, I'm definitely going to get some practice time into this. I know the track, obviously, but it's more just the is this ready for a live show?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
Sooner or later.
You'll get there. That's quite a funny thing to be told about my own music. You'll get there.
So, I mean, you're talking about being more physically fit than you were in the early days.
Yeah.
Speaking of the early days, it's 10 years, a little over 10 years since you put out your first EP.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Into the Deep.
Yes. Oh, good Lord.
When you look back at the past decade and the band and what you've achieved in that time, what kind of sticks out? How do you feel about what you guys have done in the band so far? It's
an interesting one. I try not to be too reflective these days, just as like a kind of I've got quite a meditative approach to life at the moment. I'm very like into my wellness and physical fitness as well as mental fitness. So I try not to be too romantic with the past, because it's been and gone. But it is very fun to look back at the kind of like the growth of it. I think that's what is most interesting, because I look back at how primitive those recording sessions were, and kind of like who we were as people as well. It is really interesting. I almost kind of like don't know who I was back then.
Yeah.
And to listen to that music as well, and think of where I was musically and the stuff that I knew and how little I knew. It's quite entertaining. But yeah, the growth of it is really cool. Sometimes we're at band practice and maybe we've like finished up and we're just having a few beers and we just kind of like reminisce. We always reminisce about stupid things that happen while we're on the road, which is always a lot of fun. So yeah.
Playing bigger shows now as well, bigger rooms. So that's always good.
Yeah, we played some shows at the Days to Remember, which was really awesome. It was definitely a scramble to get ourselves kind of ready for it. We kind of got the offer for it, I think it was a week and a half before we actually went on the road. We usually have about 4 to 6 months notice before we play shows usually, right, which is fun. But we managed it. And we had some festivals to play as well. Some festivals in Europe, which is one of our all-time favourite things to do. I love playing European festivals. We did, I never can pronounce it right. I think it's Jera on Air in Holland, which is it's like a big metal festival.
Yeah.
So we did that. And we've done that before, and we absolutely love playing in Holland. It's such an awesome place, and it's fun to. It was definitely a shock to the system to go to that size. We play a variety of venues. We've played a variety of venues over the years. When we went over to Japan, those were club shows, and even though it was really successful, we had like a great time there. We couldn't believe how many people were coming to the shows. There were still, like 300 cap rooms. So to go to like, even regardless of them being successful shows, smaller shows, to this after playing no shows for years and years and years was really, really odd, but also good, because it kind of, again, it shocks you, really wakes you up to, we need to be ready for anything. But we hope this continues, because I feel like we really put on a good show, no matter the size of the venue, or who we're supporting, or even if it's our own headline show ourselves.
Well, I think that's the main thing that any band should do. Just, people have paid tickets to see you perform, so give them what they paid for. That's the fans are the reason that you're there.
Well, exactly, and that's kind of the approach that we've got to have. There was definitely some things that needed improving from the get-go, and we had to be really kind of savage with each other and say, look, dude, not naming names or anything, but just say, like, look, dude, this was bad. You've got to kind of get this going again. And it's one of those, people out front, they're probably not going to notice it, but we hear it, and it's like, no, if we notice it, it's not good enough. Like, get it together, sort of thing. But we want to have that kind of unmistakable live set, because you're absolutely right. People are paying to come to see us, and we want to make sure we've got the best show possible for them.
Well, I'm sure you'll be ready for the tour in a few weeks.
Yes, yes.
So obviously there's the new album, there's the tour. What else is planned for Ocean's 8 Alaska for the rest of the year?
That's a really good question. I mean, what I'd like to do is kind of start writing stuff again pretty soon, just so rather than having another long period between releases, is that we can get things prepared fairly quickly. We haven't got many other shows booked afterwards, just because obviously we've been off the radar for a little while, and so much you'd be surprised with how much has actually been pushed back from COVID. There's still tours that are happening next year because of COVID cancellations. So not only are we battling with that, but we're also battling with, saying to promoters, yeah, we are actually, we're still alive. We've got a new album, and it's a case of just waiting for them to, just to see how it plays out, and then more shows will start funneling in. I mean, we've had offers for a couple of things, so those will start to grow again soon. Because one thing we really want to do is, continue the exploration of the world. We really, really loved playing in Japan and Australia, so we'd love to touch base there again at some point soon, and anywhere else that we can go, really. We've done a lot of America. Maybe we'll go back there again. We've got a large fan base out there. Canada as well. We get loads of messages for South America, which is really cool, actually. And I don't know anything about the logistical aspect of going there or what you could do. But if we can make it work, that would be such a send. So, I mean, we'll wait and see what happens with that. But, personally, I'd like to, kind of at least get an idea of writing, maybe a direction of what we want to do. Next, like I said, we can't ever just sit down and just make something. We need to kind of see where what we're feeling and what we want to do, and then just roll from there, man.
Nice. Well, I'm excited for you guys. I'm sure this album's going to do a lot of things for you. Before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, have you got any final words, anything you want to say or plug, anything like that?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I do appreciate the time given to talk about this. It's fun doing this kind of thing again. There's not been many podcasts or interviews the past few years. So just to be talking to new people again is really cool. So thank you, very much appreciated. Well, I guess just a little plug for the boys, really. Obviously, Chris, our drummer, has released his side project album, his drum project album, Steezy, which I've had an absolute blast writing with him. It's been lots of fun. Everybody's really stoked on it as well. So, if you're listening to this and you don't know about that, please go check it. James as well has his other band, Live a Lie. I think he's been recording stuff. Actually, he's been recording some of the vocals with Chris at his studio as well and doing stuff there. So obviously make sure you check out his band as well. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoys Disparity. For those that are coming to the tour in September, looking forward to seeing you. Please come say hello at merch, and message us with your thoughts about Disparity. Share with all your friends as well. Please just show everyone, because there's going to be a lot of people that have kind of lost with Oceans just because of the time frame between Hikari and this new album that we're bringing out now. So share with your friends, send it to them, share it online. Just let's get everybody listening to this record.
Yeah, I back that. That 100%. Yeah. Well, thanks again, dude.
Cool. Thanks again, mate.
See you later, dude.
Bye-bye.
And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider supporting the podcast in any way that you can. We have a Patreon where you can get access to each episode a week early, along with some other perks, a merch store, or you can leave a review wherever you're listening to this. You can also follow me on social media or subscribe to the newsletter, where I'll send out each episode to you via email, along with regular playlists. All of this can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.